Follow us on Twitter at ghettoplex_mp4, on Instagram at ghettoplex.mp4, and subscribe to us on YouTube at ghettoplex. Gladiator. I wanted to rewatch the film before I go and watch the sequel. The sequel I'm not looking forward to, just based on the cringy trailers that have come out so far. And not only that, but before rewatching the original today, I remember it ending in a way where I thought, I didn't even think at the time because it just didn't seem necessary to even think about, but why do we have a sequel? The ending is so strong of the original Gladiator that it doesn't merit a sequel. So now, having rewatched it, I feel the same. I hope the sequel is not disappointing, but let's talk about the original. I'll talk about the sequel later this week after I watch it. So the film begins, we get a footnote about the Roman Empire, how its expanse exists from northern Africa to England, and we begin in the Battle of Germania. It is here where we get an introduction to our protagonist, Maximus, played by Russel Crowe, the one and only, and his will and fortitude as a leader, how he fights amongst his men to defeat this opposing army. He has a signature advantage as far as his skill as a soldier, a warrior. He, even in this kind of a jiu-jitsu open guard position, he is able to overcome being fought against while on his back. And as this battle is won, we are introduced to our next character, the antagonist, the Caesar's son, Commodus, who is played by Joaquin Phoenix, accompanied by his sister, Lucia. And we already get the motive from Commodus, who is already expecting the empire to be handed over to him because his father is the Caesar. So Commodus is expecting to inherit the position from his father as Caesar. However, unexpected to Commodus, Marcus Aurelius, the Caesar, his relationship with Maximus is greater than his relationship with Commodus. And we see this relationship through a short period of time. It's very apparent that Marcus favors Maximus much more than his own son, Commodus. You could see the chemistry between the characters and the confidence that Marcus has in Maximus's ability to be a leader and to protect the future of Rome. So while Commodus is making his own plans to be the Caesar of Rome, Marcus is making an offer to Maximus to succeed him as the Caesar. And so this is what's boiling up in the beginning, is this expectation from different characters, because we have Commodus, who wants to succeed his father, and Maximus, whose only motive really is to go back home to Spain, to his family, to his farm. So Marcus learns about Maximus's desires as he's kind of making his final offer to Maximus. He's making his final order. Marcus asks Maximus, what is it he desires? And that's when Maximus, as the loyal soldier he is, he just says, I want to go home. I want to go back to my family. And as Marcus asks Maximus about the details of his desire, he learns a great piece of information about Maximus's loyalty and his motives as a person. He learns that Maximus is an honorable man, just based on the simple desires that he has after being so victorious for the Caesar. Maximus is not seeking power, he's just seeking to return home after fulfilling his duty. It's so great the way they set up this beginning, the way they set up the conflict for the whole story, the entire movie, the whole motive of the storyline, and Marcus's final wish to Maximus to take over his position, to restore Rome to the people and to the Senate, to make Rome a proper republic. And this heavy decision that he leaves on Maximus's shoulders, only then to have to break the news to Commodus, his son, who you can tell he's not fit to be a leader. It's apparent. It's immediately apparent. You can tell he is like a spoiled child. And Lucia, who already has an idea of her father's plans for Maximus. There is a little bit of I guess I would say like a sexual tension when we first see her interaction with Maximus. It's kind of funny. It's like, Maximus, he got hoes in different area codes. As Maximus is taking the decision into consideration, it seems like he's taken this moment to think over what it means to fulfill this last request for Marcus. He has a conversation with Cicero, one of his men, and there's this great quote from Cicero who says, "Sometimes I do what I want to do. The rest of the time, I do what I have to do." And I think this is the line that really resonates with Maximus, and what influenced his decision to accept the offer from Marcus to succeed his position as the Caesar. However, as he's accepting this this offer unofficially, Commodus is not taking the news well from his father Marcus about him choosing Maximus to succeed him instead of Commodus, his own son. And they're having this very dramatic conversation. And you can see here it is where Commodus begins to take actions into his own hands, as Marcus's last words are, "Your faults as a son are my failure as a father." And it is here where Commodus murders his father. And he uses the murder of his father to set up Maximus for the fall, because he has now assumed the position of Caesar. So Maximus is set for execution along with his family. And it's just this dark turn that happens so fast. It's just it's really great storytelling here. The entire film really is just, everything is set up so perfectly as far in a narrative perspective. When you're watching, it's so engaging, the drama of this empire. Anyways, Maximus fights his way out of the execution. However, his family, when he makes it to his family in Spain, they have already been executed in such a horrific manner. And this just breaks Maximus, and he becomes a captive of Proximo, who is an owner of these slave gladiators. And the journey here begins, the gladiator journey begins, where we see Maximus in this amateur gladiator circuit battling, not just for survival in the beginning, it seems, but more for an opportunity, which arises later. As Commodus returns to Rome, he assumes command as the Caesar, and he already immediately is having conflict with the Senate. To distract the people of Rome, Commodus provides them with the Colosseum to gain favor amongst the people by providing them with entertainment. And while that's happening, the Spaniard is growing his reputation as a skilled gladiator. He's basically the Demetrius Johnson of gladiators. He is a favorable warrior amongst the fans. So he is building his name as an entertaining figure amongst the gladiators. And we also learn about Proximo, who is the owner of these gladiators, and we learn that he was also once a gladiator, but fought for his freedom. And this single piece of advice is what really helps Maximus become this great figure amongst Rome, because he gives him this piece of advice where he says, if you win the crowd, you'll win your freedom. Because that's how Proximo won his freedom. He wasn't just a good warrior, he was also a good entertainer. He was a figure that the people could get behind. It's kind of like today, when I watch these UFC fights, it's a cycle of human behavior. We want to get behind a figure that we want to support. So much like Demetrius Johnson in his early days of UFC, he was always a very skilled fighter, but because he wasn't expressive, his name wasn't respected the way it should have been until he left the UFC and he was more open as a public figure. And when people got to know who Demetrius Johnson was as the person, more and more people started to get behind him as a fighter. People would root for him, and people will probably argue in the comments, it doesn't matter how popular the fighter is, it should matter how skilled they are, which is true. But guess what? That's not how you get the crowd. The crowd will support a fighter who they want to support because of their personality. When it comes to anything, really, the skill set kind of comes in secondary. When you have a figure who their story and their story is relatable in some way, it doesn't have to be completely parallel to your own life. It just has to be understandable. You have to understand, why do I support this figure? Anyways, let me get back to the film. So we get back to Rome, where Commodus is trying to set up his own chess pieces for the takeover of Rome. We learn about his desire for his sister Lucia, and Lucia is having these secret meetings at night with members of the Senate about ways to stop her brother's plan. And we also meet Lucius, who's going to be our protagonist in Gladiator 2, but his first encounter with Maximus. And then we get our entrance to the first fight in the Colosseum, which reunites our key characters, Maximus, Lucia, and Commodus, along with the new characters of this story, the members of the Senate. We have Proximo, Quintus, a former member of the Spanish army led by Maximus, and Cicero, who was also a member of Maximus's command. And then here again we get another demonstration of Maximus, his leadership amongst the gladiators, keeping them together to survive, fighting as a unit. Because no matter the circumstances, Maximus survives because he is a good leader. So it didn't matter whether Commodus set him up and set up the people of, or tried to set up the people of Rome against him. He was always going to be that natural born leader, which Commodus is not. So when we see these battles in the Colosseum, they're more than just a spectacle. They are a demonstration of Maximus's character. But yeah, so after the first battle, it is here where Commodus learns of Maximus's survival from the execution that he ordered against him, because he wants to go down and meet him because he's masked as a gladiator. So there's a reveal that happens when Maximus removes his helmet and shows himself to Commodus. And this causes Commodus to basically throw a tantrum because his plans to remove Maximus from the picture failed. And not only that, but the people who were in charge of executing him lied to Commodus and told him that Maximus was dead. So he's already feeling the effect of having no loyalty, regardless of his position of power. And this also inspires Lucia to continue traveling in the shadows to set up Commodus, her brother, for failure, for betrayal. And meanwhile, as she's making her own plans, the bond grows between the gladiators and Maximus because they also respect him as a leader because he's kept them alive. His leadership has made them successful as gladiators. And no matter how much Commodus tries to set up the failure of Maximus, like for example, there's a battle in the Colosseum where it's Maximus versus this giant gladiator and lions. The lions are tigers. He sets them up against tigers. So Maximus basically has to fight against a giant, colossal man and tigers at the command of Commodus. And he still fails. He still is unsuccessful in removing Maximus. Because, Maximus is that guy. He continues to be the Demetrius Johnson of Rome. But because he is unsuccessful, he takes more extreme measures in now having a war against the Senate. And then we get a little bit more sexual tension between Lucia and Maximus. It's kind of unclear why Maximus has this disdain or this distrust of Lucia. He kind of has this simultaneous feelings of distrust, but also, like, I don't know if I would call it a forbidden love, but there's something there. There's some kind of chemistry happening there. You could tell there's history there. So he can't completely hate her. I wish I understood more of the backstory between them because there's something there. Anyways, yeah, so the drama really builds up as we see Commodus versus the Senate while Maximus is trying to rebuild his army in the shadows of Proximo's prison. But even Proximo, who seems very much like a selfish man, only concerned with his own wealth and freedom, he is even won over by the leadership of Maximus. And in their final battle against the Roman soldiers, we get the gladiators and Proximo to have one last stand against the Roman army. And even though they fail, it's the loyalty that you see there, that no matter how much Commodus sets up his army against the people have already made their decision. Their loyalty is not to Commodus. Their loyalty is to Maximus. And in his final attempt, this is where we get to the climax of the film, which is really just so strategically and just brilliantly set up. We get our final fight between Commodus and Maximus. And Commodus, he's no leader. He's like a spoiled brat. He has no, other than inheriting the position of Caesar, he never had the loyalty of the people behind him. I love how we're having this last conversation before Commodus and Maximus enter the arena, the Colosseum. And Commodus, who is arrogant, but also fearful of Maximus, he says to him something about like, you think you're special because you don't fear anything, something like that. But Maximus, he says to him that a man once told him, death smiles at us all, and all a man can do is smile back. And I love how Commodus tries to mock him over that phrase, only to learn that phrase was told to him by his own father, Marcus. So it again kind of rubs into Commodus's face that conversations his own father couldn't have with him as his own son because he was just never a competent figure for Rome. And even with Commodus trying to give himself an advantage by stabbing Maximus before their final fight, like Maximus is chained up and Commodus tries to disadvantage him by stabbing him before they enter the arena. This was a battle that Commodus could never win. Because like I said, Maximus is the Mighty Mouse, the Demetrius Johnson. He cannot be defeated. He's too skilled. He is too much of a leader. You can't just take him out. It's not that simple. Man, it gets really emotional too, as they're in this final fight. Maximus is dying. He's having visions of his family, his wife and his son. And he's kind of like almost seeing like the gates of heaven while he's trying to finish this final fight with Commodus. And it's like that's what was important to him the whole time. It's just so crazy how he's fighting for the people of an empire, and he's also fighting to return home to his family, and the only way he could return home to his family is in death. It's just so emotional, man. It's so crazy. I was tearing up at the end just after he wins the fight, and Lucia goes to him and tells him, go to them, go to your family. Maximus, after victory, fulfills Marcus's wishes in giving his final orders to the army to return Rome to the Republic and to the people. Man, it's such a good movie. I don't know how they're gonna follow this up in Gladiator 2. I just don't know how do you outdo this story? But I guess we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. Are you guys planning on watching the sequel? Follow us on Twitter at Ghettoplex_MP4, on Instagram at Ghettoplex.mp4, and subscribe to us on YouTube at Ghettoplex. See you guys in the next one.